Hi, I'm Lisa Gonzales, Chief Business Officer here in Mt Diablo Unified. This week, Ask the CBO, we're going to take a look at some specific impacts of the governor's budget proposal. So just want to remind everybody where we are. This is our budget cycle. We just had the governor's budget message, always comes out in January, and that was issued about 3 weeks ago. What we're now doing is we're now hearing some trailer bill language that's giving us a little more information as to what to expect. I'm not going to go into everything, but here are some key points that I want to share. I'm always grateful when great organizations are able to succinctly put in presentations to all the CBOs and all the leaders in California about spending. So I have to thank Capital Advisors Group for this. What they did was they took a look at all of the K-12 spending and what the governor is proposing. So right now he's proposing an 8.13% COLA on LCFF, the local control funding formula. I'm going to explain a little more about that in another slide, but let's just go through some of these. There's a tad bit of COLA around some specific categorical programs, including special ed and child nutrition. There's additional money that we're expected to get on the art and music initiative, which was Prop 98, approved by the voters this past November. There's some talk right now about TK, transitional kindergarten expansion. That hasn't solidified yet. There's an equity multiplier that it doesn't look like we're going to qualify for any of our school sites. There's some specific funding that's going to go for Narcan. This will be refresh and renewal of what school sites will be able to receive, and this will be ongoing. Literacy coaches and cultural experiences for students. This is one-time money. All seniors would be able to access somehow, don't know all the language yet, but $200 towards activities that are related to the arts, one-time funding for literacy coaches. Now, here's something that's a little challenging for many of us. A $1.2 billion across the state reduction in money we've already been allocated for this year. So imagine we're sitting here in February and the governor has let us know that some of the money that we are to be receiving this year, we are now no longer going to receive. And so for districts like us who have started to tie some of these funds up in either people or programs, it becomes a little challenging because now we need to find another funding source for those. And then he's talking about reductions in general fund resources. So let me go to another slide here because this is really important. When you hear 8.13% COLA, cost of living adjustment, we're not slated to receive 8.13%. The reason for that is because we were already expecting 5.38%. So really, it's only an increase on what we'd already planned for and budgeted for next year, which means it's really only an increase of 2.75%. However, there are other factors that play into this that are going to reduce our budget further, and that has to do with average daily attendance, the days that students are in school. Certainly, if they are on independent study, we're able to collect some of those funds, but if students are not here every day because they are sick, because they are out of town, because of some other family event or emergency, sometimes truancy, we don't receive funds for that day. So despite the fact that we have our staff in place and we pay our staff every day, we don't get the money during the school year for the students that we have. So when our enrollment declines, or something that I'll show a little later, it means that we don't get the revenue that we're expecting. So let me delve into average daily attendance here for just a minute. Average daily attendance, ADA, we would expect that 100% of our students would come to school every day in an ideal world. Well, the world isn't so ideal. So prior to COVID, we were at about 94.5% to 95% of the students were at school every day. So during COVID, we know that we had at-home learning. Our ADA actually increased because we were able to see that students were logging on at some point in time. So percentages went up. This school year started, and when we adopted our budget back in June, we really took a look at what was happening in the world, what was happening with COVID and the fact that vaccinations are here. And so we made the assumption as did most school districts, that our average daily attendance, kids are going to start coming back to school more frequently. Well, when we did our first interim, what we learned is that didn't happen in Mt Diablo. It didn't happen in the rest of the state of California, and it is not happening nationwide. We have students that are not in school every day compared to where they were prior to the pandemic. Every percentage point we drop is valued at approximately $3.26 million. So from our adopted budget that you can see right here, our adopted budget for this year assumed 93.5% of the students would be at school every day. In actuality, it's only at 91. So our revenue decrease for this year alone is expected to be approximately $8 million. We're expecting about the same the next year. So we're going up incrementally because we believe these are reasonable numbers. And certainly at second interim, we will check this, but we are not seeing students coming back in droves the way that we had expected. Therefore, when we do our second interim report, we are decreasing our average daily attendance, and that will reduce the amount of money that we are receiving. I just want to point out one thing. When we talked about the governor's new budget proposal for 8.13% COLA, that COLA is on LCFF, the local control funding formula. It's the bulk of the money that we receive. And you can see that right here. In our unrestricted dollars, it's 97% of what we receive. So on the unrestricted side of the house, 97% of our money coming into this bucket right here would be receiving an increase in COLA. This next slide, and you can see where I put the Mt Diablo information here in white and in red. On the right side, again, we're talking about that 8.13% COLA, but remember, it's only an increase of 2.75%. We already budgeted the other 5% and a little more. If 59.62% of our budget from LCFF, plus all of these programs here, special education, child nutrition, adult ed, those are all going to get that additional COLA. But take a look at the left side. These are all the programs that we have that bring in a great deal of revenue toward programs and services for students. ACES, our after-school program, that is not going to receive COLA. So it's really important to take a look at what we get COLA for and what we don't get COLA for, because it plays out in our staffing and our funding. There are a couple other things I want to share. One of them has to do with pension costs. On the left side, you see STRS, the California State Teachers Retirement System. It's our teachers, it's our counselors, it's almost all of our administrators that you see at school sites. It's some of the administrators at the district office that provide support. You can see what's happened with COLA, with the pension costs. So right here, they're saying 19.1% for this year, 19.1% for next year. That's not going up. I just want to point out that in previous years, the governor, different governors had decided they were going to buy that down a little bit, which meant that they contributed money toward the retirement plan, and it decreased what districts had to pay for. We're not seeing any buy down this year. And I just want to point out that STRS has increased from 8.25% to 19.1% in 10 years. That's pretty notable. But what I'm more concerned about is what's on the right side, CalPERS. It's our public employee retirement system increase. So let's go to this next slide here. What you can see here is these are the numbers that were predicted originally. These are the new numbers that are coming out. And so you'll see for next year, instead of the increase, we're seeing an increase of 27, or it's going up to 27% instead of 25%. So what that increase is for us down here is, if we are paying more into PERS for many of our employees, it is going to cost us almost $1.2 million more for next year. And the following year, you can see it's expected to go up from 24.6% to 28.1%. That for us is an increase, of almost $2.4 million. So when we take a look at all the COLA that we're going to get for LCFF, and then we start subtracting some of these other costs, you can see where that 8.13% COLA sounds like it's really high, but really we're getting 2.75% more than we had anticipated. And now we need to start deducting. So I wanted to point that out because we've certainly heard that the state budget is not bringing in as much, that they're tapping into some of the reserves for some of the additional expenses and the COLA that they're expecting to give us. So hope that explained it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, please do go ahead and send those to cbo@mdusd.org, and it may be one of those topics that you see in a future Ask the CBO.